When a man builds his entire legacy on respect, what happens when that respect is tested live, under blinding studio lights? The morning was supposed to be ordinary, polished, rehearsed, safe. But as Denzel Washington walked into the Good Morning America studio, there was a stillness around him, the kind that follows a storm before it breaks. The cameras were already rolling. The lights were too bright, the smiles too wide. Somewhere in that room, something felt wrong. Michael Strahan stood ready, confident as ever, his trademark grin hiding a hint of challenge. The two men shook hands, warmth on the surface, tension underneath. Denzel's handshake was firm, his posture grounded, a quiet reminder that humility doesn't mean weakness. But even before the first question was asked, the air seemed to hum with unspoken friction. The audience clapped, unaware that what they were about to witness would soon be trending worldwide. This wasn't going to be a friendly morning chat about movies and fame. No, this was going to be a collision of two worlds, performance and principle. As Denzel adjusted his mic and Strahan leaned in for the opening question, the camera caught something rare, a flicker in Denzel's eyes. Calm, but calculating. He knew when someone was about to test him, and in that split second before the first words left Strahan's mouth, the tone of the morning changed. This wouldn't be another celebrity interview. It would become a lesson about respect, restraint, and the moment when a man of silence decides to finally speak. Because when truth walks into the room, even the spotlight hesitates to shine too bright. When a man builds his entire legacy on respect, what happens when that respect is tested live, under blinding studio lights? The morning was supposed to be ordinary, polished, rehearsed, safe. But as Denzel Washington walked into the Good Morning America studio, there was a stillness around him, the kind that follows a storm before it breaks. The cameras were already rolling. The lights were too bright, the smiles too wide. Somewhere in that room, something felt wrong. Michael Strahan stood ready, confident as ever, his trademark grin hiding a hint of challenge. The two men shook hands, warmth on the surface, tension underneath. Denzel's handshake was firm, his posture grounded, a quiet reminder that humility doesn't mean weakness. But even before the first question was asked, the air seemed to hum with unspoken friction. The audience clapped, unaware that what they were about to witness would soon be trending worldwide. This wasn't going to be a friendly morning chat about movies and fame. No, this was going to be a collision of two worlds, performance and principle. As Denzel adjusted his mic and Strahan leaned in for the opening question, the camera caught something rare, a flicker in Denzel's eyes. Calm, but calculating. He knew when someone was about to test him. And in that split second before the first words left Strahan's mouth, the tone of the morning changed. This wouldn't be another celebrity interview. It would become a lesson about respect, restraint, and the moment when a man of silence decides to finally speak. Because when truth walks into the room, even the spotlight hesitates to shine too bright. The interview began like every other, polite laughter, a cheerful intro, a headline about Denzel's latest film. The studio lights bathed everything in gold, cameras gliding smoothly across the set. But beneath that sheen of television perfection, something sharp flickered between the two men. Michael Strahan leaned forward, his tone friendly but rehearsed. "You've always been known for discipline, Denzel, for holding people accountable, especially in Hollywood. Ever get tired of being the serious guy?" The question drew laughter from the audience, but Denzel didn't join in. He smiled lightly, not from amusement but patience. His eyes, however, never wavered. "I'm not tired," he said evenly. "I just think there's a time for jokes and a time for truth." A ripple went through the room. Strahan chuckled, trying to brush it off, but the subtle challenge had been returned. Somewhere in the control booth, a producer signaled for the next cue, sensing the temperature rising. The camera zoomed in. Two men, both icons, both masters of composure, testing the edges of each other's confidence. Strahan's questions began to sharpen, hidden behind charm. Denzel's answers became leaner, tighter. No wasted words, no defensive tone, just conviction wrapped in calm. Viewers watching live might not have noticed it yet, But this wasn't about acting or interviews anymore. It was about values. Two men, two philosophies, one trying to provoke, the other refusing to be moved. Outside the studio, New York traffic roared like background music. Inside, the tension was turning electric. Denzel adjusted his cuffs. Strahan shuffled his notes, both pretending this was just conversation. But both knew. The real interview hadn't even started yet. The questions began to sting. Soft on the surface, but laced with bite. Strahan leaned back in his chair, that easy smile still plastered on, as he said, "You talk a lot about staying grounded, but Hollywood's not exactly known for humility, is it?" The audience laughed, the kind of laugh that waits for someone to take offense. Denzel didn't. He simply nodded once, his expression unreadable. "Hollywood doesn't define me," he replied. "That's why I'm still standing." Strahan smirked, tapping his cue cards. "Come on, Denzel. You've been in this business for decades. You've seen the hypocrisy. Don't you think sometimes actors preach values they don't live?" A few audience members murmured. The words hung in the air, heavy, baiting. Denzel's eyes didn't blink. "I think everyone preaches something," he said slowly. "But not everyone practices silence when it matters most." The air grew still. Strahan shifted in his seat. Cameras caught the faint tightening of his jaw, the friendly tone thinning. The control room whispered over the comms, "Stay with it. This is gold." Denzel leaned slightly forward, voice calm but edged with truth. "The problem isn't when people talk about doing right. The problem's when others mock them for trying." It wasn't a shout. It was a statement, surgical, precise, impossible to deflect. The audience fell silent. You could hear a mic crackle. Strahan tried to recover with a joke, but the laughter didn't follow. Denzel's presence filled the room, heavy yet composed, like a man standing in the center of his own storm, unbothered, immovable. And in that silence, the balance of power began to shift. Strahan straightened his cards, a thin smile on his face, the kind people wear when they're losing control but won't admit it. He tried one more time, voice steady but edged with something sharper. "You talk about staying real, but it's easy to say that when you're sitting on millions, right?" A collective gasp swept through the audience. The line had crossed from curious to personal. Even the crew froze, unsure if this was still part of the script. Denzel's eyes lifted slowly. No anger, no smirk, just silence. "Michael," he said quietly, "money doesn't buy respect. It reveals who already had it." The room stilled. You could feel the weight of his words pressing against the walls. Strahan opened his mouth, but no words came out. The camera zoomed closer. Denzel's face calm, unflinching, the authority in his tone unmistakable. "You don't remind a man of where he came from when he never left it," Denzel continued, his voice low and deliberate. "I don't talk about struggle for applause. I talk about it so someone listening knows they can make it out too." The words landed like thunder, not shouted but felt. The crowd didn't cheer, they absorbed it. For a moment, Strahan looked away, the confident host replaced by someone caught in reflection. Producers waved frantically for a commercial break, but no one moved. Denzel leaned back, the faintest smile touching his lips. Not victory, but peace. "It's okay, brother," he said softly. "We all fight for respect in different ways." And with that, the camera captured what no script ever could, the instant when truth overpowered performance. When the show cut to commercial, the studio dissolved into chaos. Producers whispered into headsets, camera operators froze mid-frame, and the audience sat in stunned quiet, the kind that only truth can create. Denzel removed his mic with measured calm, the same way he might close a scene on a film set. No anger, no grand gesture, just quiet conviction. He nodded politely to the crew and walked toward the exit while the theme music struggled to fill the silence he left behind. Michael Strahan stayed seated, eyes lowered to his cue cards. His trademark smile had vanished, replaced by something human, reflection, maybe even regret. The control booth buzzed with decisions. Do we address it? Do we cut it out? But it was already too late. Within minutes, clips leaked online. On Twitter, the footage exploded. Denzel walks out live on GMA. Hashtags flooded timelines. Some viewers sided with Strahan, calling it a misunderstanding, but most saw something deeper, a man refusing to let his dignity be turned into entertainment. One viral post read, "That wasn't an argument. That was a masterclass in composure." Another said, "Denzel didn't lose his temper. He reminded everyone what respect looks like." Back in the studio, Strahan finally spoke, voice quieter now. "Well," he said, forcing a smile, "that was unexpected." The audience gave a hesitant laugh, unsure if they should. The tension never really left the room. It just shifted into memory. As the credits rolled, producers called it a technical break. But for millions watching, it wasn't technical. It was personal. That morning, Good Morning America didn't just air an interview. It broadcast a lesson, one that no camera could fully contain. That evening, while headlines buzzed and social media replayed every second of the clash, Denzel Washington appeared exactly where few expected him, not in a press conference or an apology video, but at a small charity event in Harlem. The same calm that filled the studio now carried through the crowd as he greeted kids, shook hands, and laughed with quiet sincerity. There was no mention of the morning's confrontation, no bitterness, just purpose. When a reporter finally asked him about what happened on Good Morning America, Denzel paused for a moment, his voice soft but sure. "I wasn't offended," he said. "I just don't play the game of disrespect. You can challenge me, but don't confuse honesty with hostility." The words spread across the internet within hours, quoted, remixed, repeated, yet each version carried the same weight. He hadn't raised his voice or defended his ego. He had simply reminded the world that real strength doesn't need to prove itself. Meanwhile, Michael Strahan released a brief statement the next day, calling it a misunderstanding on live television. But by then, the story had taken on a life of its own. It wasn't about blame anymore. It was about balance. Clips of Denzel's calm expression circulated with captions like, "Grace under fire and power doesn't shout, it stands." In an age where outrage sells and chaos trends, Denzel's silence became the loudest moment of the week. He didn't storm out, he walked out. Not in anger, but in self-respect. And maybe that was the real message all along. When dignity is tested in front of millions, the truest response is not to fight, but to rise. The next morning, millions replayed that moment, not for drama, but for meaning. In a world addicted to outrage, Denzel Washington reminded everyone that calm is not weakness. It's power under control. He didn't win an argument. He won something far greater, the silence of truth. "You don't have to shout to be heard," he once said in an older interview. "You just have to stand for something worth listening to." That's what the world saw. A man who chose respect over reaction, grace over gossip, and walked away with his peace intact. As the spotlight dimmed, one question lingered. When your dignity is challenged in front of everyone, do you fight back or do you stand taller? Because sometimes the strongest statement you can make is to simply walk away. For more stories that reveal what truly happens behind the spotlight, the truth, the tension, and the triumph, make sure to subscribe. Because the next moment that changes everything could happen live.